Hi, my name is MachineRite, and this is Understanding Fortnite. Today I want to talk about trades. Trades are basically an exchange of damage, although both players do not necessarily have to receive damage for a trade to happen. To win a trade, you basically have to do more damage than your opponent, and the best method to do this is to have advantages over your opponent. The first most common example of this is probably mechanical advantages. Mechanical advantages are exactly what they sound like. It's basically you can just perform your skills like building, shooting, and editing much faster than your opponent, and this is usually enough to give you an advantage in Fortnite. But mechanical advantages still don't really mean anything unless you have the other advantages to go with them. So the next one would probably be your focused or positional advantages. So this would be like your peaks, or anything like that. Peaks work off the concept of action and reaction. So basically you're inputting an action that your opponent has to react to, which means you'll have no thought process delay or any reaction time delay in what you're doing, but your opponent will. If this was my opponent here, I already know what I'm going to do, and he has to anticipate when I'm going to come out. The secondary advantage is crosshair placement. So basically I can hold my crosshair where it needs to be. This just means that I have less actual movement to get my crosshair on target. So yeah, I call these my focused advantages. They're really just positional advantages, but I like to call them focused advantages because I can set these up at will, whereas the rest of the advantages are either acquired over time, like mechanical for example, or the next ones that you're about to see, which are more relied on what your opponent is doing, which is the next advantage, which is given advantages. A given advantage is your opponent making a mistake. The most common example of this is your opponent not knowing where you are, and basically letting you land some sort of free shot or something that they can't return fast enough, like during endgame rotations, or just if you see somebody out in the open, you can usually land a free AR shot if they don't know where you are. Another example of a given advantage is swap delay. Well, I have a whole video on this. Every time you don't have your weapon out, there's going to be a delay getting back to it. So whether you're healing or whether you're in the edit menu or you have your builds out, basically there's going to be a delay before you can shoot. Something similar to swap delay is spray return. Depending on the distance, this can also include weapons that have a higher DPS at certain ranges. So if somebody had their shotgun out at long range and you already had your AR out, you would win that trade just because the AR does more damage at long range. Or the reverse scenario where your opponent has an SMG or an AR and you already have your shotgun out. A good example of this is something I called spray return. Basically what this is if your opponent is spraying your wall down, you can hold your shotgun out, wait for the wall to break, and then land a higher damage shot. You can also do this trick at long range with an AR. This isn't really swap delay, this is more of a bloom advantage, but if your opponent is spraying you at long range with an AR, they're going to have a larger bloom circle. So if you had a wall in front of you and your opponent was spraying it down, their bloom circle is huge. What that lets you do is you can actually line up first shot accuracy and get some really accurate free headshots on them once the wall breaks. The last advantage for winning trades is your stack advantage. This is an old Quake term referring to your overall equipment strength. This just means the weapons that you have, and it also takes into account the amount of health you have. A stack advantage with weapons, for example, would be if two players with the same accuracy were fighting each other and one had a gray pump and one had a gold pump. The gold pump is going to win every single time. The gold pump is going to win the trade every single time just because it does more damage. A health advantage doesn't really help you win trades, but it can really help you finish fights. This allows you to play more aggressively and allows you to tank some damage if you need to, meaning that you can actually afford to push into somebody's box and still win the trade. Even though technically he will shoot first and most likely do more damage if he's playing defensive, you can still tank that shot and still win the trade anyway, just because your shot will finish him while you can still afford to take that shot. This is why it's also really important to keep track of trades. A common problem I see people having is not being able to finish fights, and really all you have to do is win one trade without taking a lot of damage, and this health advantage can allow you to force a 50-50 and win the fight. Also remember that this goes back to mechanical skills, and you actually have to be confident in your accuracy and your aim, or else you won't really be able to trade properly. One thing to add is playing mind games or faking out opponents is really a method of given advantages and is very high variable. Just because you try to fake somebody out doesn't mean that they're always going to fall for it, and that's why I call these things high variable. It really depends on the opponent. Some opponents have seen certain tricks before. A good example of this is the ramp phase shot technique. This is something that's becoming very popular, and the fact that people are doing it all the time in creative fights now means that you're going to be able to start anticipating this in game. Because both players can shoot through the ramp, this means that it's totally relying on your opponent not shooting at you when you're doing this, because your feet are visible and it's easy to hold crosshair placement where it needs to be. I think that people are going to start recognizing this technique very easily soon, and it's not going to be as effective as it is now. So I still think that some of the best advantages are using positional advantages like peaks. So that's all I wanted to show in this video. Thanks guys.